Coming at you from Los Angeles, this is Mobility Revolution, powered by HyreCar. We're going to take you on a journey through the unique business models and income opportunities that mobility as a service has to offer. From selling cars to sharing scooters, you'll learn how you fit in to the mobility revolution. Hey everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Mobility Revolution. I'm your host, Nate Ryan.
And I am Reese Moulton.
And today we have an awesome guest with us today, Jeff Cripe from Cargo. After graduating from Yale, Jeff became an early team member at Birchbox, then a founding e-commerce team member at Christie's, where he helped build the world's leading online art platform. In 2015, Jeff joined Lohman's advisory board to relaunch the discount fashion icon as an online-only retailer after it was purchased out of bankruptcy by a hedge fund. Then in 2016, Jeff founded Cargo, the leading provider of in-car services to the rideshare economy. Based in New York City, Cargo is a venture backed by $40 million from leading VCs and strategic partners, including Founders Fund, Kutu, Techstar Ventures, and Kellogg's 1894 Capital. Jeff was selected for the Forbes 30 Under 30 and Ad Age 40 Under 40 for his work on Cargo. Outside of work, he is on the executive board of Project Art as an amateur paleontologist credited with the discovery of new species of Tyrannosaur. Jeff, it's great having you on the show.
Thanks for coming on today, Jeff.
Likewise, guys. Thanks for having me.
No problem. So before we get into the weeds here, we have one question for you. How did you get interested in paleontology?
That's a good question. So I went to a high school, which was actually a boarding school based in outside of Los Angeles in a town called Claremont, near all of the Claremont colleges. And on that campus is an accredited museum of paleontology, the only one in the world that is actually on a high school campus. It's an awesome museum. It's known for a handful of different things, including a pretty incredible collection of footprints. And we were forced to do, every trimester, we were forced to do some after school activity. And I typically would play a sport. And rather than do a sport, my third trimester of my freshman year, I elected to be involved with the museum. Did some work for them for about 3 months, and they host these really cool trips for kids and actual adults and real, sort of published like world-class paleontologists over the summer. I got involved with that. I won on one of those trips, and I just got hooked on it. And through some combination of luck and some hard work, in 2015, 2005, when I was 15, found a new species of Tyrannosaur at a site now called the Cripe site. And we've basically, up until this year, actually, this is the last year that we worked on it, but we worked on it for about 14 years, from 2005 until 2019, published material on it. Ended up finding multiple Tyrannosaur, Hadrosaur, multiple different turtles, and has Darkid, which is like a massive like pterosaur, like a flying lizard, pterodactyl. The only, it's like a 30-foot creature. I think the only one and the best example of it from the Western United States. It ended up being kind of a cool treasure trove, and I've stayed really involved with the museum, ever since, and gone on, trips nearly every year with them, and continued to hunt for fossils. So it just became something I got involved with when I was younger and really had a passion for. And it's one of the few things that allows me to like get outdoors and camp for extended periods of time and kind of go off the grid, with no excuses or qualms, every year. So it's just something I love doing now.
That's awesome. I mean, yeah, we've seen a couple of things from your Twitter handle to your bio on your website. It's incredible to see someone so interested.
So, it's kind of going down this rabbit hole a little bit. But what is more exciting for you, getting on Forbes 30 Under 30 or discovering a new species of dinosaur?
Definitely the dinosaur, man. I peaked when I was like 15. I've got nowhere to go but down. No, I mean, Forbes is a great honor. It's just a world-class group of people that they're bringing together. I think that's been a good dinner table, a good dating story for me for a long time. Yeah. I get a lot of mileage out of the dinosaur, man.
Awesome. Well, let's jump right into it. So can you tell us a little bit about Cargo? What is it? And, how did you come up with the business idea? And, what was the process like of launching the company?
Yeah, we first started to become interested in starting the business back in 2015. The two things that we fundamentally realized were, one, the economics of rideshare just like didn't quite make sense to us, and we heard from drivers that they weren't making enough money. We heard from Uber that not just Uber, I mean every rideshare company on the planet, none of them are profitable, and we said, hey, it seems obvious to us that. That there should be a better way, an incremental way to monetize every trip. And hopefully a thoughtful way to do that puts more money in rideshare companies' pockets, our pockets, and drivers' pockets. The second thing was, in the way that we thought about, actually turning that into a reality was we noticed that there was a really valuable commodity that was emerging, and it was the time that we were spending in the back of these cars. And it's, I think in 2017, it was 2 or 3 billion hours per year collectively we were spending in rideshare vehicles. And that probably now is 4 or 5 billion hours per year just because of the growth of the market and proliferation of rideshare services globally in some of the biggest markets worldwide. And we just set on a quest to figure out what to do with all of that time. And the airline industry was an interesting model for us. There were, several multi-billion-dollar businesses monetizing airline trips with advertising, with the provision of Wi-Fi, with food and beverages, with entertainment. And we thought, hey, all of those things, could and should exist in rideshare trips and eventually autonomous trips. And we wanted to be the company that didn't just operate one of those things. We wanted to operate all of them and become kind of like the all-in-one fleet monetization partner for rideshare companies globally. And we set out to begin with commerce, so that basically the provision of like food and beverages, snacks, like electronics, what we think of as like daily essentials and discovery goods, with what is essentially a vending device. And today we've launched and deployed nearly 50,000 of these cargo boxes across 3 countries: the U.S., Mexico, and Brazil, in 14 cities, and distributed well over 10 million products to passengers, and impacted the earnings of nearly 50,000 drivers. And it's been a good success so far. And we knew that in 2015 that was where we had to start. The rideshare industry wasn't ready yet for advertising, for entertainment, for things that felt too much like, kind of like hashtag taxi, which rideshare was in many ways defining itself as the antithesis to. So we started with something that we felt like, passengers, drivers, rideshare companies, and us would all, uniformly recognize as truly value add. And now we're beginning to move more into the media space. I don't know if there was some news that leaked a couple of weeks ago that we're beginning to test car top devices and car top advertising with in a partnership with Uber, and there's other things kind of in that space that we're interested in. So we started with something we felt would kind of be a good foot in the door approach for us, and have always been interested in launching other products and other verticals that I can't talk too much about, but I can talk kind of broadly about. That mirror in some ways the way that the airline industry is developed. And our goal ultimately is to be that kind of all-in-one provider that whose kind of sole focus is enhancing the passenger experience and enhancing revenue per trip that's generated per rideshare ride.
So as we're talking about, there's a lot of great little bits you just mentioned there that we want to get to later. But I want to focus right now on the rideshare driver themselves. What's the benefit for rideshare drivers? One, there's some of that kind of like passive income opportunity for them here. So how much are these drivers making on each transaction? And how easy is it for them to actually operate the cargo box while they're driving?
Yeah, great question. So just a little bit about the product and the business itself. It's effectively a vending device that we design, manufacture in-house. They are customized to sit on top of and strapped to the top of a driver's center console in between the front passenger seat and front driver seat. It's a translucent lid so that passengers can see the products that are inside, that can range from snacks to gum to mints to Advil to iPhone chargers. It has 2 charge ports built into the front of the device so that passengers, free of charge, no pun intended, just can go ahead and charge their devices and they're in the car and they don't have to bother the driver for an outlet. And we're essentially providing the hardware, all of the products inside of it, and the inventory management system that we centrally manage that is tracking at any given time. What have we provided you? How quickly are you selling through that at the individual SKU level? And when do we need to replenish you? And then shipping you additional incremental replenishment products to supplement and replace those that you've sold through. So we look at this as like, hey, let us be the store manager, let us be the logistics provider, let us be this little convenience store that you can stand up in about 5 minutes once we've shipped it to you, and we'll track and replenish all of the inventory free of charge, and then rev share with you based on how many products that you actually distribute. And that happens, there's a 25% share of every retail item sold. So if you sell a $10 iPhone charger, you get $2.50. And then there are also discretionary bonuses and commissions on sample items that are sold. I shouldn't say sold because there's no price. We partner with brands and have distributed millions of samples at this point, which are brands partnering with us to reach rideshare passengers with physical products. So it could be, Mars Wrigley launching a new flavor of Skittles, or Coke launching a new flavor of Coke with us, actually getting those products in car, paying us to distribute it, and we're cutting drivers into those earnings. And then we're distributing those earnings directly to the accounts that they create with us on a weekly basis now. And those earnings typically total on a monthly basis for the average driver around $100 a month, and for the top 10% of drivers closer to $250, $300 a month.
And so what is the what's the word I'm like, reception from the drivers? What has that been like?
It's been awesome. We've got close to 200,000 signed up globally across 50 states and probably 40 countries.
It's incredible. And besides earning extra cash, I guess in passive income for the drivers, how else is Cargo benefiting the rideshare driver?
A couple of things. I would say one is definitely earnings. Two is, and depending on how much you earn with us, which is usually a function of how friendly you are and how much you drive, you can earn anywhere from 3 to 10% more monthly with us, especially if you're factoring in the cut that a rideshare company takes and some of your fixed and variable costs as a driver that come out of that sort of top line revenue for you as a driver, like your phone bill and gas. It's actually a pretty nice little lift on a monthly basis. That's super passive income. So that's important. But I would say, honestly, to a lot of drivers, equally important are ratings. We've got data that shows that our drivers are more highly rated when you actually have a cargo box with you. So that's important. And drivers love to share on social and directly with us. Just nice comments that passengers will leave for having this sort of additional amenity inside the vehicle. And then the third thing is, driving can be lonely. You've got strangers cycling in and out of your car on a daily basis. And a lot of our drivers actually tell us that it's a really nice icebreaker with passengers to sort of start a conversation. Because for a lot of passengers, we've had close to 40 million passengers get into cargo-equipped vehicles, but we're only in probably 2 or 3% of rideshare vehicles. So we've been growing really fast. It's a great, problem to have that the market is so large, but our penetration on that market is still like 2 or 3%. So most folks, when they get into a car with cargo, have not seen it before. And it's a nice way to sort of stimulate themselves, and we gamify the experience in a certain way and try to make it really fun for drivers. You can get on like hot streaks, and things like that just sort of make it more fun. But it's definitely a combination, like all gigs, it's a combination of kind of satisfaction with the experience, the earnings that you actually derive from it, and then for drivers in particular, the higher ratings that they get.
That's interesting. I never actually really thought about the idea that cargo is an icebreaker, but as you were saying that, I was thinking about the few times I've been in a rideshare car with the driver that has a cargo box, and I always end up getting into a much more engaged conversation with that particular driver than I would just hopping into any other Uber and Lyft. So there's a lot happening within the rideshare space right now. One of the most notable bills that have recently passed is the California AB5 bill. How is that going to affect cargo, or is it going to have any effect on your business?
It's hard to say at this point. It's not anything that we. I guess we follow it as a function of how does it affect rideshare businesses, and then there may be knock-on effects to us. But at this point, it's hard to know. I think we just have to, honestly, just kind of be reactive to the way that the regulatory winds are going to blow. But I think we've built our business in a way that acts primarily as sort of an autonomous third-party, provider that works across, that can work across multiple rideshare companies. And I think depending on which way the regulation goes, we feel pretty confident that our business will endure and there will be a place for it, kind of regardless of the outcome.
Got it. That's awesome. So you briefly touched on some of the information that you guys are receiving from rideshare drivers in terms of some of the positive experiences they've had working with cargo, how much they're earning. But what is some of the, kind of data that cargo is using to benefit both the brands that you're working with and, the rideshare drivers?
Yeah, it's really primarily transactional data. So what's cool about us is that if you think about, most people don't actually realize how large of an industry sampling is for CPG brands. Especially as it has gotten more expensive to advertise online. A lot of brands, especially food and beverage brands and makeup brands, have been turning to distributing physical product samples because it's actually not that much more expensive now when you compare cost per click versus cost of the product, especially for a lot of these CPGs and cosmetics products, which are, can be 80-90% gross margin to sample products with us. And the way that product sampling traditionally works is, think about the last marathon you were at or the last grocery store you were at. You don't really know who the person was that you distributed a sample to, what they did with it, if they put it in their purse, if they threw it away, if they actually liked it and went and bought more online. And what we can track is, because all of the retail things, items, the things that you actually purchase inside the car, like an iPhone charger or Advil and things like that are maybe a little bit more higher end and costly that we wouldn't typically sample. We capture transactional data there. But we also capture transactional data because you have to check out for those free samples digitally through our app or our mobile web app. We capture data on all of those product distribution or items that are distributed as well through the cargo box, and we can share back anonymous and aggregated data about what our consumer population looks like for that product. We can share day-parted information that I can think of for one energy drink partner that we were working with. They were actually really surprised that their products moved really well in the mornings for us. They assumed this would be more of a late night product for people going out, but it was actually an awesome supplement for coffee drinkers in the morning. We found so there's a lot of geolocation, city by city, consumer, transactional, day-parted information that we can share about the distribution of those goods that can tell brands that we work with how their products perform across consumer segments and cities. In comparison to other products they have, or sort of a general sort of anonymized competitive set of products. How does a Mars chocolate product actually perform generally against other, capital C chocolate products that we have distributed through the cargo platform? So it's primarily that sort of transactional and product distribution data that's really valuable for us when working with CPG brands.
And on the consumer side for brands, or not even for brands, but just in general, how has the adaptation on the consumer side been? And, do you have any, any advice for the rideshare drivers to better help sell the products or get people involved with buying the products?
Yeah, it's tricky because we don't want drivers to have to be salespeople. We want this to be something that stands alone and is just passengers can transact with it independently without needing the driver. Miami is actually an interesting forcing function for us because many of our drivers are Hispanic, and there can in some cases be a language barrier between drivers and riders. So it would be impossible for the driver to be a salespeople to non Spanish speakers. So we had to really come up with a way to just absolutely, if pretend that there was no driver in the car, how would a passenger just experience this? So we rely really heavily on the positioning of the box, the actual design of the box. You'll notice that it actually lights up a little bit at night so that you can see it even at night. The messaging on top of the box, which is both instructional and meant to be eye-catching, and also educational. But you're right. I mean, it's as I said, most folks getting in and seeing a cargo box are seeing it in a lot of cases for the first time. And you're not used to purchasing things and actually having this mini bar inside of your rideshare vehicle. So it is somewhat educational, but we see it, nearly a third of all passengers will actually, hit our menu and transact with us. So it works pretty well, but I think there's, as we get more deeply integrated with rideshare partners, and as our own app becomes even more sophisticated, there's going to be an opportunity for us to more proactively message these people as you're waiting for a vehicle, one day to potentially be able to say, hey, your cars are actually cargo equipped. Would you like to browse your menu and pre-order your product, and your driver will have it waiting for you? I think there's so much more of that funnel, that total rider funnel, that we can actually capture as we mature and become even more sophisticated from a product perspective, so that we really allow the driver to focus on just driving and passengers to transact and have a really seamless experience with us.
Are the drivers, are they in control of the items that they're putting into these boxes, or is this something that you guys are doing systematically through, I guess, from a business standpoint?
That's actually a great and a really topical question. Historically, we have controlled all of that centrally and systematically with our inventory management system is our special sauce. It's built from the ground up. It's genuinely category of one. There's no other IMS on the planet that can manage 50,000 plus micro storefronts and the products that are coming in and out of those boxes on a daily basis. However, we have heard, and we've really listened. We try to do a good job of listening to our drivers. That drivers do want a choice. They want to say in the products that they actually have, and it's a tricky one to figure out because there are constraints on we place constraints on where products can go, whether that's a contractual constraint with the brand about the cities that those products can be distributed to, whether that's a temperature constraint, not shipping chocolate to Texas during the summer, just to maintain the integrity of the product. So it's actually kind of a tricky constraint to introduce, which is driver choice. But we are actually rolling that out in one market right now in Miami, giving drivers the opportunity to have a say in the products that they actually carry in their car. And so far it's new, but it's been really well received. So I do hope to continue rolling that out market by market, because it's something that drivers have absolutely asked for.
Gotcha. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. I could assume that, with a rideshare driver having a great experience selling, multiple items that, go much quicker than others, they'd prefer to have those in their boxes while they're driving around. Obviously, that'd help them increase their earnings. But what's the weirdest product or item that you guys have, offered in these boxes?
I wouldn't call it necessarily a weird product, but I would call it unexpected. I mean, just it's not weird in a vacuum, but I think it was unexpected for most people in a rideshare vehicle, and it got a ton of press. We did Korean face masks, so that you could turn your ride into like a little mini spa experience. And it just got covered everywhere. It was great, and it was really well received.
That's so funny. My wife and I took a Uber probably a couple weeks ago, and one of the best things she said she ever experienced in a rideshare experience was the fact that Cargo had makeup removers in their little boxes that they were giving away for free, and she thought that was just the greatest thing, just like being able to have those little beauty products available right there.
It's great to hear that, and we've got an awesome merch team that helps us hopefully source a lot of both for sale and for sample products, and those have definitely been a really big hit, both with our passengers and our brand partners too. Just I think those use cases that aren't immediately obvious, that go beyond just I'm hungry, I'm thirsty, or if you can tap into them in the right way with the right product, it can just make a passenger's day.
Yeah, totally agree with that. So shifting gears here a little bit, I want to talk about dealers and fleet management and how cargo is kind of working in this space. So are you currently working with any large fleet operators or, auto dealers in the rideshare space? And if so, what do those relationships look like, and how are you utilizing these giant fleet of vehicles that are out there?
It's a great question. So, I mean, this is all public. We've got, and I know this isn't exactly what you're asking, but just for context. So we have an exclusive global multi-year agreement with Uber directly. So that has been a major path to scaling our fleet of drivers globally. So that's been really important to us. In addition to that, we have always been very interested in, not only from a driver acquisition standpoint, but an operations standpoint, what could a partnership with small fleets, large fleets, leasing businesses, what could that actually look like for us? And potentially tying the actual cargo product to the car rather than the driver. So we've I would say we're interested in it. We've, for several years, we've been going all the way back to years ago. We were talking to GM and Maven, and we're interested in it. We've been exploring it. I can't comment too much about any plans that we have specifically, but it's definitely interesting to us, and I think there's something there, and we'll eventually kind of crack the code on what that is.
Right, and so to continue on this fleet, as we're talking all about the rideshare driver, but what are your thoughts on how cargo is going to shape its business as autonomy becomes more of a reality, within the next 5-10 years?
Yeah. So some people are intimidated by this. To me, this is the big opportunity. This is like the multi-billion dollar like version of our business, like, can really only be achieved with autonomy, because all of SiriusXM is a really interesting business to me, because they have essentially created these like OEM agnostic relationships, and they're produced in a majority of, their hardware is embedded in a majority of vehicles that come off the assembly line, and they work across all these different OEMs, and are super platform agnostic. And I think I find that really interesting. And my eventual aspiration for our business is that over the next 3 to 5 years, we establish ourselves as the premier, trusted, largest, most experienced fleet monetization partner that include products across commerce and entertainment and media and Wi-Fi and connectivity and all of these different things that we think should be in and around these vehicles. And we have all the data about on what length of trip people actually opt into, and using Wi-Fi, on what length of trip products actually sell best, what how the hardware should be embedded and automated and integrated into the vehicle itself to have more simple and elegant sort of vending and product distribution inside vehicles. How the U.S. has different needs than the needs of Brazil, because the average ride length in the U.S. is 12 to 15 minutes versus in Brazil, where it's, I think, 35 to 37 minutes. So we want to have all that data, and as those AVs are actually going from a product development standpoint of, clearing the regulatory hurdles, clearing some of the technology hurdles, and the chassis are sort of being, reinvented from the ground up and redesigned with this, next generation passenger experience in mind. I'm hoping OEMs and the AV companies tap us to say, hey, you've got the most data about what passengers want. What is it? How do we integrate it? And can we work with you to collaborate on what that experience looks like? And that's how I will really know if we've succeeded, is if we have a seat at that table and are, having conversations with the OEMs and the AV companies. And that's why we've been excited about our relationship with Uber, who I think will be one of the leading AV companies. And that's why we've also kept up really good relationships with execs at a lot of the top OEMs.
Gotcha. I mean, I think you answered my next question, actually, which was going to be, how I you see cargo adapting and expanding on its in-car service, but sounds like you guys have an incredible future ahead of you. But yeah, I think that just about wraps it up today. And just wanted to ask you if there's any closing remarks or anything else about cargo that you'd like to include for our listeners.
No, I've just, we've been working on the business for about 3.5 years now. And I feel like we've just, we're not just building something, a better version of something that exists. It's something that's really new. And, today we're creating topical solutions for rideshare vehicles. And eventually I think we'll be creating much more, elegant and embedded, solutions for AVs. And I just think we and Uber and some of our other, other partners around the world are just kind of inventing this stuff in real time and in response to the economic needs of the industry, the needs and desires, of what passengers want when they're actually on trip, and really creating something cool in real time. And I'm just excited what the next couple of years look like for us and the industry as a whole. We always wanted to be a company that, we saw Uber in particular as just a globally transformational business. And, around those globally transformational businesses like Apple and Airbnb and Uber and others are always, economies of goods and services that kind of orbit around them. And I think we were the first company to really start to build on top of that rideshare platform. And you've seen a lot of other companies in-car screens, on-car advertising, tax and, sort of accounting and service, products becoming available for rideshare drivers. The ecosystem is becoming really rich, and it's actually been exciting for us to see that kind of develop around us, as we thought it would, and also to play a big part in kind of leading that development. So, no, just thanks for listening. It's been a lot of fun to build, and just excited about what the next year or so looks like.
Yeah, thanks, Jeff. It's been great having you on the show. And for those of you listening, if you're interested in learning more or you're getting signed up with Cargo, just visit HyreCar.com/services and click on the sign up now link under Cargo. Jeff, it's great having you on the show, and join us next week for another episode of Mobility Revolution.